Hey y'all, this is Brown, and tonight we're going to be talking about a two-part Ghost Rider story called Desperate Times, Desperate Measures. And the story takes place in issues 98 and 99 of Marvel Comics Presents. And the stories that were in this book that had featured Ghost Rider up to this point had been written by Howard Mackie, but this was the first story wherein Ghost Rider was a headline character for the book, wherein a writer other than Howard Mackie took a shot at handling him. And the writer in this case was a young Dan Slott, who has long since gone on to become a well-known writer within the comic book community. Amongst other things, he wrote the book Superior Spider-Man, which is actually pretty cool from the issues I've read of it. But you also have Jimmy Palmiotti, who is arguably better known as an inker rather than a penciler, but here though he does pencils and inks to astonishing effect. And even though it's just a two-part story with each chapter being 8 pages, Jimmy Palmiotti does a very good job of giving us a very detailed environment and very organic looking characters, and also sort of capturing the Javier Saltrez and Mark Texeira vibe of urban horror meets sort of supernatural horror of the regular Ghost Rider book. And I actually liked the story. I mean, there were some neat things about it, stuff that kind of added to the character development of Danny Ketch. And also, I thought the idea of the main antagonists, the sprites, were, I mean, it was a really intriguing notion, because the sprites are lesser and smaller forms or manifestations of the demon Despair, who is more well known, who is better known as a foe for characters like Man-Thing and Doctor Strange and sometimes Spider-Man. But this was an instance wherein the main villain himself isn't present, but rather smaller aspects of himself are present instead. And so the sprites are manifestations of him that basically go throughout the world and hunt for people who are experiencing negative emotions or harsh times in their lives, and they'll just kind of latch on to the negativity and amplify it to where the person that they're latching onto will oftentimes take their negativity to an extreme excuse me, to the point where violence often occurs. And so seeing them go up against Ghost Rider and interacting with the people around them, I thought was pretty interesting. But initially, there's a focus on just one of them, and it's chilling. The way the story opens up is there's a sprite that's kind of just chilling with a vagrant named Jack Weaver. And Jack Weaver is, oddly enough, one of those few people who can actually see, say, people or creatures from another plane of existence interacting with our plane of existence. And so, he's pretty hammered. I mean, he's, drunk and what have you, but I mean, he's just thinking that, this sprite is an imaginary friend. And so the sprite's drawn to him because of the negative emotions he's experiencing as a homeless person. And plus, it's freezing cold in New York. I mean, it's snowing, and there's not much in the way of hospitality from the passersby. And so Jack's just kind of chilling with his quote-unquote imaginary friend here and trading bad jokes with him. And the sprite, for its part, is highly amused by this, because on one hand it's amused at the pain and negative emotion that's coming from Jack, because of his life situation, but it's also amused at the circumstance of, say, an ordinary person being able to see it, because ordinarily that does not happen. But somehow Jack's able to kind of tune in on this, and so the two of them are just kind of chilling and trading jokes, and then the sprite kind of points out that hey, look at this guy right here. I mean, you look at him. He's got nice clothes and what have you. I mean, surely he's got at least a dime on him. And so Jack, he's holding out his cup, asking for change or spare change, and the guy just kind of walks by and spits in his cup, tells him to get a job, and walks off. And so Jack gets pissed, and this in turn gets the Sprite pissed, because I mean, here we are, we've got negative emotion here, but this is kind of being directed at the person that the Sprite here is kind of fond of. And so the Sprite, while it is using the negative emotion that Jack is experiencing, it also is, you get the idea that it feels personally slighted, at the fact that this person was rude to someone that it was enjoying its company with. And so it's telling Jack, just say the word and I'll make him pay. And so it cuts to a short time later, and Danny Ketch, aka Ghost Rider, is on his motorcycle, riding through the streets, and he's kind of lost in thought because he's thinking about all the stuff that's happened in his life lately, and most recently his conflict with Snowblind and Zodiac and Death Watch. And so definitely kind of keeping in line with what's going on in the regular Ghost Rider book. And so he sees that there's kind of a cordon, the streets kind of cordoned off at a certain part in front of this building, and he's trying to see what's going on, and there's a jumper, and it's the guy who was rude to Jack. And it turns out that this Sprite had basically made this guy against his will go to the top of this building, and basically it's taunting him and telling him that that your life's pointless and there's no hope for you, and you're just living an aimless existence, and you can only express yourself by taking your pain out on others. So you don't have anything to add to this world. No one will miss you. So just jump. All you gotta do is jump, and all the pain will go away. You can rest. You can be free. And so this guy, he is basically just freaking out here because he's like, what am I doing? Why am I up here? What the hell's going on? And so, and on the other hand, he's also seeing this this creature here, this Sprite. Real quick, I'll show y'all what it looks like here. But this is what they look like on the cover here of '98, and the artwork's by Sam Keith. And then also, here's the cover for '99. You get a slightly better picture of them. And they look like the Ices from the Max, which is a book that Sam Keith worked on at Image Comics. But I'll show you a better picture of the Sprite real quick. So here he is, here chilling with Jack Weaver here. I love this. I love the detail though. Just on one hand you got the snow, and then you got the artwork on Jack and the Sprite. Very good work by Joey Palmiotti. So this guy's already freaking out because he doesn't know why he's suddenly on top of a building and about to jump off. I mean, he was basically kind of compelled to go up there against his will, and he's also hearing and seeing this little floating demon thing that's just sort of crouching around and telling him all this stuff. And so the guy, he just gets overwhelmed with all the negativity and just jumps off the building. And so as he's falling, Danny sees this, and the crowd's going wild. They're freaking out, and the police are trying to keep everyone back. But Danny though, he's trying to turn into Ghost Rider, because he knows that if he can turn into Ghost Rider, then Ghost Rider can use the motorcycle, which basically is the motorcycle that Danny has, but it transforms when Danny transforms into Ghost Rider. So it's like the two are linked. But but Danny knows that if he can turn into Ghost Rider, then Ghost Rider can use the bike to charge up the building and save the guy. And so the only way he can get Ghost Rider to come out is, basically if innocent blood is spilled. And so he takes a knife that he has on, like a pocket knife, and cuts his hand and throws his hand down on the bike's gas cap, which is usually how he's able to transform into Ghost Rider. And usually what ends up happening is if, say, someone is, like, say for instance, someone's assaulted by a criminal or something like that, and they're innocent, and their blood being spilled, it's what alerts Ghost Rider within Danny, as well as the bike, that Ghost Rider is needed. And so the gas cap will start glowing, and Danny puts his hand on the gas cap and transforms into Ghost Rider, called by innocent blood. But here, though, he's trying something different, and he's thinking, okay, technically I'm innocent. I mean, I don't know about Ghost Rider, but I'm innocent. Danny Ketch, I'm innocent. And so he's thinking, okay, if I cut my hand real quick, slam it on the gas cap, surely that'll turn me into Ghost Rider, and then I can save the guy. And basically this all happens within the span of a couple of seconds, right? And so the guy's falling, and Danny's just trying to turn into Ghost Rider, but it's not working though. And so I mean, his hand's all bloodied up, and the gas cap's getting covered in the blood, and Danny's getting more and more frantic. And then the guy hits the ground with a splat, and once his blood spilled, that's when Danny turns into Ghost Rider. And so so at this point he leaves the scene, and he's kind of tuned into the supernatural frequencies of anything demonic or evil. And so he's trying to see what compelled this guy to end his life, because basically Ghost Rider can tell that something made the guy jump. And so he follows a trail and ends up finding the Sprite on the rooftop. And so at this point he grabs the Sprite and is demanding to know what it did to the guy, and is throttling it. But then the Sprite tells him that, hey, you're dealing with a big crowd here, and I'm not alone. And so Ghost Rider turns around, and there's like a whole swarm of the Sprites, and they basically just fly at him like a flock of crows, or a murder of crows, whatever you want to call it. And the sheer amount of them is enough to propel him and his bike off of the roof, and he falls to the ground, but not before his bike does. And his bike basically just falls straight into the ground, to the point where it basically embeds itself into the ground. And then Ghost Rider hits the ground as well, but not before trying to use his chain to grab a lamppost and swing to safety, but it doesn't work out that way. And so at this point he sort of recovers himself, and the crowd is like, what the hell's going on? Because first this guy just plunges to his death, and then next thing you know, Ghost Rider's going up to the same rooftop where the guy was, and then ends up swan diving himself. And Ghost Rider's looking around, and he's seeing that this flock of Sprites are basically just hovering over the crowd. Like there's one Sprite for each person in the crowd. And so the crowd's already freaked out at this, and so they feed on this negativity, and they start to influence the crowd to take their I guess you could say fear and anger out on Ghost Rider. And so they already have a fear of Ghost Rider, because he's kind of like a urban legend for the city of New York at this point. I mean, yeah, he fights crime, but at the same time, I mean, there's definitely something demonic about him. And so the crowd just starts throwing stuff at him and basically trying to kill him. And it's at this point that Jack, the bum who inadvertently kind of started all this, I mean, he's trying to tell the crowd, to stop, because they're being controlled, and he can see all the sprites, and this is kind of like something that sort of snaps him back to some form of sobriety, because he realizes that this imaginary friend he has was something evil. And so he sees that there's like a whole bunch of these quote-unquote imaginary friends, and they are not so friendly. I mean, they're evil. Like, they're literally making people making all these people try to hurt Ghost Rider. And so he's trying to tell them to wake up, look around you, you're being controlled by demons. But the people, I mean, even though they're being controlled, they can't see the sprites unless the sprites will it. And so and the sprites at this point are having too much fun, and they don't want to show themselves to the people that they're controlling. And so the people are just all like taunting Jack, saying, "Oh, shut up, you're just a bum, get out of here." And Jack at this point he's like, I mean, the brief moment of I guess you could say initiative or heroism he had in trying to snap these people out of it, the moment fades, and he's like, they're right, I'm just a bum. What was I thinking? Why did I think I could make a difference here? And so he just wanders off. And then the bike, Ghost Rider's bike, which was embedded in the ground, it suddenly bursts out of the spot where it fell and forms a protective circle around Ghost Rider, as in, it starts basically driving itself, or forming a protective barrier around Ghost Rider, driving the people away, trying to give Ghost Rider a chance to get his bearings. And so on one hand, Ghost Rider's trying to find a way to get the sprites without hurting the people that they're controlling. And so once this happens, Ghost Rider has the chance to use his chain, and he basically swings it around and has the chain links fly apart and basically turn into sort of these makeshift shurikens, which impale and puncture all the sprites, all without hurting the crowd of people. And once the sprites are done away with, the crowd they start to kind of come back to their senses, and they're like, what the heck just happened? Like, why are we facing off with Ghost Rider? What's going on here? And so they sort of scatter off, trying to get away from this strange and scary situation that they found themselves in. And so Ghost Rider seeing that the innocent blood that was spilled by the guy who jumped to his death, I mean, the innocent blood that was spilled has now been avenged, since Ghost Rider has done away with the sprites. Ghost Rider turns back into Danny Ketch. And so Danny, I mean, he has some vague recollection of this, I mean, which always tends to happen whenever he turns into Ghost Rider. He remembers some of what Ghost Rider said or did, but he's just thinking it's another day's work, and it was just kind of like a side journey in the chaos that's his life at this moment. But then he happens to look in a corner, and he sees Jack just sitting where he was earlier, and in an alleyway, and he sees that Jack is clearly not well off, and suffering and cold. And so Danny takes his bike and rides over to the guy and asks him if he's okay. And the guy's like, "No, I'm not okay." And he's like, "Why do you care?" He's like, "Well, I don't know. I just thought, maybe you could use a friendly, a friend to talk to, or a friendly face at least. And Jack just kind of thinks for a moment. He's like, yeah, that would be nice. And it ends with the two of them, kind of talking with each other. I mean, you don't hear what they're saying, but you can tell that, they're, Danny's, basically trying to, help this guy out, and listen to him and talk to him, trying to, I guess you could say, help him to feel better, about, I guess, himself or his life and what have you. But that's how the story ends. And so, for a two-part story, this was actually pretty good, because I like how it kind of develops the character of Danny further, in the sense that, one, it falls in line with his characterization thus far from the regular Ghost Rider book, in the sense that, he's not. He doesn't fight so much against the transformation of him turning into Ghost Rider, and and vice versa. Ghost Rider doesn't fight as much against himself turning back into Danny Ketch. But I also like the idea that Danny has the foresight to have a pocket knife on him to try and cut his own hand, because I mean, even though it doesn't work here, I mean, the idea he has is sound, because he thinks that even though Ghost Riders is something that, is almost certainly demonic, he himself is not. Like, he's an innocent individual. And so the idea he had was sound, in the sense that if he could get his blood spilled on the gas cap, then surely that would work. That would trigger the transformation. But unfortunately, it didn't work, which kind of calls into question, okay, I mean, we as readers, or let me phrase that. If you've been reading the Ghost Rider series up to this point, or listening to my reviews on there, then you can probably pick up on the fact that, for the most part, Danny Ketch is an innocent individual. But unfortunately, though, his time as Ghost Rider, or time with Ghost Rider, has basically brought a darkness into his life. And so, you kind of realize that, Danny Ketch, even though he's not a bad person, even though he's a good person, he's marked by the darkness that is Ghost Rider. And even though Ghost Rider is at this point, a force for good, I mean, he is something that is tied to hell. And so I guess, if you're sharing a body with something that's from hell, even though it's trying to be a force for good, I guess that sort of makes it to where you yourself aren't quote unquote innocent anymore. And so I hope that this is something that gets explored further in future issues. I mean, the whole idea of Danny Ketch not being able to, say, spill his own blood to summon Ghost Rider because he's not innocent anymore. I mean, I like that. And I also like the horror of the situation. I mean, because here's a guy, who's about to commit suicide, albeit against his will, but it's a kind of almost real life type of horror, in the sense that there are people who jump to their deaths more often than we like to think. And so here's Danny Ketch trying to save the guy, but you got the horror of the situation. I mean, you have this guy jumping to his death against his will, and he's being manipulated by a demon, more or less. And on the other hand, though, you have the horror that Danny experiences by realizing that his plan's not working, and he's just slapping his hand on the gas cap in desperation, and blood's just flying from his hand, and Danny's face almost takes on kind of like a feral expression, just in terms of the sheer desperation of the situation. And I thought it was a really nice horror moment, or I don't know if nice is the right word, but a really good horror moment. And real quick, I'll just show you all the picture in question. But so I like how it kind of cuts back and forth, between Danny, trying to, summon Ghost Rider after having cut his hand, and here's the Sprite, talking to the guy and taunting him and persuading him to jump to his death. And here's Danny, slapping his hand on the gas cap. And, right here especially, I mean, that sort of, feral look on his face, just in terms of how desperate he is, for the transformation to work. But... And then right here, I love this, series of, panels. You see, Danny, freaking out. And then you see the blood, after the guys hit the ground. And here's the start of the transformation. Great stuff. And I like how you can actually, see the eyes, in, Ghost Rider's eye sockets, except this is probably, Danny's eyes, fading into, Ghost Rider's skull here. But the artwork here, the transformation that Joe and Palmiotti is showing, it's very reminiscent of, the artwork of Saltarez and Texeria. So, I like how he did his homework there. But this right here, I think this is all Jimmy Palmiotti. I love it. And I like how, the Sprite, I mean, at first it's, it alternates between, laughing at the situation and then sort of taking it a little more seriously once Ghost Rider comes up, but then again goes back to laughing at the situation once reinforcements show up. And Ghost Rider's like, wait a minute, what? And then, lo and behold, a whole swarm of them. But yeah, I mean, all in all, though, I thought that even though it's just a two-part story, the horror was very well done. And I liked how it came from, on one hand, a source of supernatural evil, but also from, say, a source of human tragedy as well. Because on one hand, you have, the character of Jack, who you get the idea is not a bad person. It's just, unfortunately, he ends up buddying up with, a demonic entity, albeit unknowingly. I mean, he's thinking, hey, it's my imaginary friend, because he's drunk and what have you. And so once he realizes what's going on, he's like, oh my God, these things are everywhere and I can see them. And so, I mean, I really like the moment where Jack's trying to, tell everyone that, these things are controlling them. But then again, I mean, he's so damaged, by his lot in life, that, when the people, when they're being controlled by the sprites or manipulated by the sprites into just, taunting Jack and further reminding him of his, situation, all he can do is, I mean, just, walk away sadly. I mean, it's like he had a brief moment of, where he attempted something heroic, but it just couldn't last. I mean, he's too broken. But so you have, the horror that comes from, I guess you could say, an existential level from the character of Jack. But then, of course, I mean, you have, the sprites, which, we can't see them unless, they want us to see them. And they're, able to tempt people or entice people into giving into their negative emotions. Like if there's anything negative there, it's like they, fan the flame until it's like an inferno almost, if you will. But I also like the fact that Ghost Rider, even though he at this point, alternates between killing people, or at least killing his enemies and not killing his enemies, like it's something that he struggles with, because at this point he tries not to kill human foes, but a foe that's, say, supernatural in nature is fair game. And so the sprites, since they were demonic in nature, Ghost Rider's solution made sense. I mean, he uses the chains, as the chain links, as sort of makeshift shurikens. And even though it's debatable as to whether the sprites were actually killed or not, or if these physical bodies of theirs were just destroyed by the chains, but their spirits went on to, I guess, get new bodies in whatever realm they came from. I mean, but the fact that Ghost Rider was able and willing to use, I guess you could say, fatal means against these creatures was an instance that showed discernment on Ghost Rider's part, in a sense that in some of the earlier issues, I mean, he had no problem with killing people like ordinary criminals, but then he started to try not to kill them, because he was saying, I'm a servant of vengeance and justice, and so I can't just go around killing people. But then again, you have someone like Ghost Rider, who is strong as I mean, it's probably as strong as the Hulk. I mean, I'm not sure if he's that strong, but he's strong. And plus, he's got all these spikes on him. So that if Ghost Rider hits someone, damage is going to be done. Almost certainly fatal. And so, it's interesting seeing Ghost Rider getting a chance to kind of cut loose here. Now, granted, he's having to be careful not to, inadvertently hit the people who are being manipulated. But I mean, he's having to be precise with his aim, and so I liked how it showed discernment, both in the sense of Ghost Rider, strategically targeting the sprites, but also, realizing that, hey, these are demonic entities; they're fair game, and so. So I thought that was a nice little bit of development for Ghost Rider as well. So you have good character development from Danny Ketch, and then of course good development for Ghost Rider. But I also liked the ending, though, in the sense that Jack, I mean, he's feeling horrible about the situation, because he realizes that he inadvertently started it, and so I mean, he's just going back into his corner, to just sort of fade into the darkness, and hoping that everyone will forget about him. But then Danny comes along to check on him, see if he's okay. Now, Danny doesn't know that Jack's the guy who inadvertently started all this. All he knows is that this is a guy who's suffering, and he could probably stand to have see a friendly face, or have someone to talk to for just a little bit. And so I like that the story ends with the two of them just kind of, I mean, you don't hear the conversation, but you get the idea that Danny's just letting Jack kind of unburden himself. And so once again, a nice little bit of development for the character of Danny, because I mean, the way the story started off, with him, I mean, he was kind of wrapped up in himself in terms of what's going on with his life. And to be fair, I mean, if you've been reading the stories in the regular book at this point, or checking out my reviews, then that his personal life's kind of in turmoil because of what's going on with his conflicts with other villains as Ghost Rider. And so I like that in this particular instance, Danny, I mean, is trying to put himself aside to try and help someone else. Both in the instance of where he was willing to hurt himself to try and save the guy who was jumping to his death, and here, he's willing to put aside whatever drama he's got going on in his life, and just take a little bit to talk to this guy who is alone and hurting. And so I like that. So all in all, though, I think I'll go ahead and give Desperate Times, Desperate Measures 4 out of 5 stars. This was a nice little story. I mean, a short story, but a good one. And even though it was a short story, it did a very good job of further developing both the characters of Danny Ketch and Ghost Rider, and also kind of reminding readers of, I guess you could say, the existential tragedy that can hit anyone in an economic sense. Like anyone could have their life turned upside down and go from, hey, having a roof over their heads to freezing their butts off on the streets and not having a place to go. And, that could happen to anyone. And so I do, think it would have been interesting if we'd gotten to know a little bit more about Jack. Like, was his situation brought about by himself, or like was he someone who became addicted to drugs or something like that, and because of that addiction destroyed his own life? Or is he someone who was a victim of something outside of his control, and once he was homeless, only then did he become, say, like an alcoholic or something like that? I mean, even though I do like the character of Jack, and I like his development, I do wish we'd gotten to see just a little bit of maybe like a flashback or something, or just maybe some bits of the dialogue where he tells Danny Ketch, like, yeah, this is what happened to me, this is how I got here. And so, I mean, I do like that the story ends on sort of a heartwarming note, or at least an optimistic note, in the sense of Danny taking the time to try and just talk to and listen to this guy. But it would have been interesting to hear what they actually said, that kind of thing, just to kind of get a bit of background on the character of Jack. So, but yeah, I mean, the story, also did a good job of, showing us readers, how dangerous and scary just being an ordinary civilian in the Marvel Universe can be. Because, I mean, you've got, things like the Sprites, floating around behind, or running around, or flying around behind the scenes, and we can't even see them, but they're there and they're watching us and just looking for that one moment of negative emotion and just waiting to pounce on us. And it's a pretty scary idea. And Jimmy Palmiotti, I think, did a good job of illustrating the creatures in question, and showing how they're sort of like, even though they're lesser manifestations of the demon despair, they're scary and threatening in their own right, in the sense that they can easily manipulate people. And so, so whenever you see them in action, I thought, Jimmy Palmiotti did a good job, and Dan Slott, he did a good job of writing from their perspective when it's focusing on that one Sprite from the beginning. But he also did, just a good job of, making this short story something that, when you read it, I mean, it feels like something that matters. Not just as a story itself, but it matters within the life of Danny Ketch and Ghost Rider, or the lives of Danny Ketch and Ghost Rider, excuse me. But yeah, so all in all, though, this was a good story. So 4 out of 5 stars. So thank you very much for taking the time to check out my review. You got any questions, comments, feel free to drop a line, let me know. And you like what you see here, please feel free to subscribe. So y'all take care. Goodbye.